I was having y'all about Rico from Street Scores, and it took longer than I thought because I definitely wanted to make sure I rewatch the game at least a little bit, at least look at the highlights and things like that. But we are here to break down that preseason game between the Washington Commanders and the New York Jets. And boy, it was exciting. Of course, we did not come here to see a win. We came here to evaluate, and I liked a lot of what I saw. I may do like a stock ups and stock down video tomorrow, but today we're here to do the position group by position group breakdown like I typically do after practices like OTAs, voluntary OTAs, mandatory minicamps, training camp, and things like that. We're going quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, corner, safety, and special teams. You got to stick around for special teams because we have a lot to talk about there as well. Returners and kickers. So before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one. Make sure you stay tuned for all of the content. I'm gonna keep y'all updated on everything. I live streamed this past Jets game, all 4 quarters. We even started like 30 minutes before. I'm gonna do the same thing, not only for the rest of the preseason, but the entire regular season. And again, I'm gonna keep speaking it into existence the postseason as well. So every time we have a game, I will be live streaming unless there's just some weird circumstances like I'm at the game myself or something like that, or anything crazy happens. So just assume I will be live streaming during every game. I'll provide a video breakdown of what happened after every game as well. But instead of wasting more of y'all time, just give you the heads up. Let's get it. Adam. And as y'all see, I had to bring out the Sean Taylor jersey today, man. You know what I'm saying? It's game day. It's Sean Taylor jersey day, always. But the final score was 20-17. But like I said before the intro, we came here to evaluate. We did not come here to win. It would be nice. Yeah, it'd be fun. But I don't think y'all know this, but a lot of the best teams in the NFL typically lose their preseason games because they're here to evaluate specific things, make sure they're good here. Where are we weak? Where are we strong? And then we take that evaluation, adjust, we adapt, we improve, and then we go into the regular season with that information and whatever adjustments we made. That's the most important part. We're here to evaluate players, position groups, strengths, weaknesses, things like that. Different combinations, like does this guy play well with this other guy on the field at the same time? Is this guy good against specific things like specific coverages or whatever? Specific types of offensive alignment. That's what we're looking for. The final score is not that serious. Even though that Ravens game last year when we ended their streak, that was pretty fun. That was pretty cool. But other than that, the result of a preseason game should not affect your day. It should not affect your mood whatsoever. It does not matter that much. We're not trying to win that much. Not at all. We're here to evaluate certain things and dip up out of here. Also, before we get to everything, y'all saw that one time, that robot technology in the cameras for that first down marker that one time. They're starting to utilize that. All NFL games will have that, so we're not going to rely solely on the refs. The refs are backups when it comes to things that are that close. And also, I know y'all saw that new kickoff rule. Now, if you've been watching preseason already leading up to this, all the way back since the Hall of Fame game last week, then you already know. But this is the first time we saw the Commanders do it. I know some people aren't a fan of it. I love it. Just more so, not even just the rules and the way it looks itself, but I'm a big college football fan, and I like the fact that the NFL and college football are going to look so different in so many different ways. This kickoff rule for the NFL, now that they just took from the XFL, just adds another layer as to why NFL is so different from college football. College football is fast, it's exciting, there's a lot more disparity in talent, and then you have the NFL that's more structured, more organized, and things like that. So I'm really excited out of the way. I just like the fact that the NFL looks really different from college. That's the main reason I like it. But for those of y'all that may be against it and people are saying that it's impossible to get a return off, I don't know if y'all saw, but the Jaguars got a 74-yard return against the Chiefs earlier today. So that is a thing that can happen. Also, I do want to point out the fact that we will run the ball. I mean, it may have been a mix of just trying to protect JAYDEN Daniels, but we will run this ball. We ran the ball way more with JAYDEN Daniels on the field than we passed it. I believe he only attempted 3 passes that whole drive going down the field. But even on top of just running the ball with the running backs, JAYDEN Daniels will run the ball as well, as you saw in that read option keeper that he had for a touchdown. We're going to, of course, break that all the way down. And I'm also excited about Cliff Kingsbury's play calling. I know it was preseason, so I know the Jets didn't necessarily game plan against us, but at the same time, we didn't game plan against them, and his vanilla offense looked pretty good. I mean, I know there's not a lot to take from preseason play calling, but I liked what I saw, especially the run-pass balance, where we ran the ball even more than we passed it. That's really good for a rookie quarterback. I forgot the exact stats, but I saw some stat as to where, like, CJ Stroud's ridiculous rookie season last year, one of the main reasons he was so successful and efficient was because of play action. It seems like Cliff Kingsbury wants to make sure that Jayden Daniels has that as his disposal as well. Also, before the game even started, they announced that Dante Fowler was not starting. Neither was Derek Forrest, nor Bobby Wagner. Our top 3 tackles, Andrew Wiley, Brandon Coleman, Cornelius Lucas, no Zach Ertz, no Jonathan Allen, no Deron Payne, no Johnny Newton, and no F.L. Bada, who's still on the PUP list. Now, let's dive into the position group, starting with quarterback. First of all, before the game even started, Jayden Daniels pulled up in a Doug Williams jersey. Big respect to Doug Williams, but of course, big respect to Jayden Daniels. He gets it, man. This is a guy that gets it in every way possible on the field, which we're going to get to, but even off the field, the way things look, the PR side of things, the all of the things that really even shouldn't necessarily matter that much. He just hits it on all cylinders. He's clicking everywhere. He's doing such a great job. But on top of all of that, I don't even think this is like a facade. I think he means this. I think he actually really rocks with Doug Williams. And you know why? Because John Comm even tweeted about this before the game started and said that Jayden Daniels has talked a few times with Doug Williams, brought him up earlier in pressers after the draft as well. And he's been taking advantage being in the same building with him to pick his brain. But John Comm also noted that not a lot of quarterbacks we've had in recent years have taken advantage of the fact that Doug Williams has been here. Jayden Daniels has probably done it more than any other quarterback that's been here since Doug Williams has been here. So this is a guy that's very genuine with his Doug Williams fandom and love. I mean, as a black quarterback, when you have the chance to speak with the first black quarterback to ever start in the Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl, you soak up that knowledge. I would if I were him, and I'm just so happy that he does. It's not something that's necessary, but that's still big time, man. Also, I'm very just optimistic about Jayden Daniels in general after this game. Not only just long term, but I also feel like he's ready to lead us week 1 against the Buccaneers potentially. I can't wait to see that. And then also shouts out to JP Finley because he brings up a great point. Jayden Daniels came to Washington with a Heisman Trophy in one hand and a mountain of hype on his back. And in his Commanders debut, the rookie delivered. I felt like he did everything you could ask him to do. I'm not going to lie. And Jayden, admittingly, started a little off. It was a nice 5-yard gain by Brian Robinson on 1st and 10, made it 2nd and 5. Then on 2nd and 5, Jayden Daniels missed Austin Eckler terribly underneath. Like, it was such a short throw. I was like, how did you overthrow him that bad? I don't know if that was on purpose, and he thought that Austin Eckler may get blown up. I don't know. That was a crazy miss. It looked bad. I don't want to harp on him too much because maybe I got to look at it over and over again to see if he was just trying to save Austin Eckler there, not trying to throw him a hospital ball to get blown up, but it was a pretty bad throw. I'm just going to assume it was a bad throw, but we'll wait on that. That's pending. But then the play after that, 3rd and 5, pure greatness, man. And you know me, we're going to break it all the way down. We're not just here to celebrate and be happy. We're here to talk about the X's and O's and the behind the scenes of all of this. First of all, Austin Eckler, Zach Ertz, Samuel Cosmi, and Dan Quinn all pointed out the fact and talked about and confirmed how before the ball was even snapped, Jayden Daniels looked at what the Jets were showing on defense. Okay, this is what they're about to do. And then he audibled into that deep ball fade to De'Ami Brown on the sideline. Samuel Cosmi even gave us a long quote about it and basically talked about how the team's veterans are ready to get behind Jayden and rally behind him. And they're basically ready to allow him to lead them. Like, they're ready. Like, this is the guy that we can believe in. Samuel Cosmi talking about that 42-yard completion to De'Ami Brown. He said, quote, he made a check mid-play, and it turned out to be a big game. We bunkered down and we really went in there. He was calm and collected, which is what you want to see, and it was really impressive. We all sat on the sideline and we're like, dang, that was really fun. So I think everybody should be excited just from that little sneak peek right there. I know I am. I know the guys are fired up, and I think we got a dude back there. That's what you love to hear from your future all-pro right guard in Samuel Cosmi. Arguably the best player on our entire team last year, I would say, in my opinion. Then also Dan Quinn talked about it after practice, and he said that we did not give him permission for that. He said, quote, he did not ask for permission, so he just went ahead and buzzed the tower anyway, and it was a really cool play, unquote. His exact long quote, he referenced Top Gun. He said, quote, it's an interesting question checking into a long pass on third down. I thought of Top Gun. Do I have permission to buzz the tower? No. Ghost Rider, the pattern is full. And so I think on that one, he wanted to ask for forgiveness and not permission, and then throw an absolute dime over the top to Dyami Brown to go. And just to stop the quote midway right there, that's very interesting. So basically, Jayden Daniels' mentality is, hey man, I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna ask for permission. I don't have time to ask for permission. I gotta go. This is up to me. The headset's already off. Cliff Kingsbury can't even talk to me after a certain point in time in the play clock. And so I'd rather make a mistake the wrong way because I'm aggressive. I think I see something, I adjust to it, and then, hey, I'll ask for forgiveness later, over just waiting to ask for permission and then potentially giving up a big play like that. I love that confidence from Jayden Daniels to even do that. That, like, hey, I know Cliff Kingsbury didn't tell me to do this, but I really think that I can do this and make it work. And then he did on top of all of that, which we're going to get to, and that whole process in itself. Continuing Dan Quinn's quote, he says, so it was a really cool play. I think it probably illustrates for him the awareness and checks and things that go into it. So yeah, he did not ask for permission. He went ahead and buzzed the tower anyway, unquote. That's what you love to hear from your rookie quarterback, taking that much command of the offense. This guy checks, changes protections, makes checks at the line, audibles already. First preseason game, first drive of his first preseason game, already doing stuff like that. And also, let's break down the play now. So after he did that, before he even snapped the ball, after he snapped the ball, well, actually, before we even get there, you're seeing the nuanced pre-snap process and an ability to not only read a defense pre-snap, that's one thing, but then to go to the right answer. When you audible, you make the correct change. You don't just audible to a play and it doesn't work. You go from, oh, this doesn't look good. That's already one positive right there in Jayden Daniels' corner. But then you also come up with the right answer. Okay, based on this, this is what we're going to do. That's elite stuff. That's two things in itself already before he ever even snapped the ball. And then Jayden said after the game that Cliff, I like the fact that he even pointed out the fact that Cliff trusts him enough to even give him that type of control over the offense. That's a lot for an offensive coordinator to do, to trust that his rookie quarterback, especially quarterback in general, but let alone a rookie, to be able to have that much control over the offense. And then he showed veteran level nuance to look off the safety after he snapped the ball at first, because he was already knowing that he was going to Dyami Brown before he even snapped the ball. That's what the audible was for. But so that was all, again, that's already greatness in itself. But then after he snapped the ball, he's looking left so that the safety moves left so that Dyami Brown has nobody over the top of him and he's able to deliver that ball. And so that's already a lot of nuance there as well. And then the ability to not only throw a 45-yard bomb with precision accuracy against great coverage too. Dyami Brown was well covered. He did not have a lot of separation there. And Jayden Daniels put it in a perfect spot for him. But people also don't think about the fact that this was Jayden's second throw of the entire game. Let's also talk about that. Let's start there, because he floated a throw over Austin Ekeler's head the play before, and then immediately proceeded to throw that beautiful dot 40 yards down the field the play right after that. And let's also add on the fact that, I mean, he had that inaccurate throw at first, and then he had the mental fortitude to even just erase that play from his memory and not allow him to allow it to affect him going forward. Like, think about it. The man's first pass ever in the NFL was a straight duck over Austin Ekeler's head. Again, whether it was on purpose or not like the best start. And then he bounced back from that the very next play and threw an absolute dot. But back to my main point, we may finally actually score in opening drives. That was like the main point I was leading to, because this guy started off hot immediately. I feel like a lot of people did not notice that either. We had an opening drive touchdown, y'all. When was the last time that's happened? How many times can we say we've done that in the past few years? I know it's preseason, there's context, but that's still just a different feeling, man. I'm telling you, again, second throw of the drive, second throw of the game, second throw of his career, dot. So it looks like we finally may have a quarterback and an offensive coordinator combination that can actually start hot in games. It won't take us until the second quarter to finally get past the 50-yard line in a game, man. So I'm really excited about that. And also, I want to point out the fact that first completion, that was his first completion, just in case if you don't remember. First completion ever at the NFL level, granted it was preseason, was that 42-yard bomb to Dyami Brown. But it's actually crazy too, because that was his first completion in college as well, a big deep bomb for Arizona State before he even went to LSU. I thought that parallel was really interesting. And then Shouts out to Cliff Kingsbury for cooking up a well-called drive all the way down the field, filled with a bunch of runs to get them down the field, and then Jayden Daniels kept it on a read option and jogged into the end zone. Basically walked into the end zone after a certain point. He didn't even have to run, so that was a beautifully designed play, but also a good job by Jayden Daniels. I'm pretty sure he had control over that to decide if I'm going to hand it off to the running back. Didn't look good, so I'm going to keep it and run myself, and it worked out. And he also gave the ball to his mom after that, apparently, which I thought was really crazy. So Jayden Daniels ended the day just off of one drive, 2 of 3, 45 yards, 3 rushing yards, and a touchdown. That's where the 3 rushing yards came from. I'm very impressed. Also, after the game, Jayden Daniels and Aaron Rodgers chatted a little bit post-game in the middle of the field. It wasn't very long. They talked way longer at the Jets joint practice, which I was really happy about during special teams drills. But either way, Jayden Daniels soak up as much knowledge from him as you can get. And then Dan Quinn said after the game, talking about Jayden Daniels, that he wanted to go back out there for another series, and he told him no. So Jayden Daniels was like, hey, man, I'm having fun. Let me go back out there. Dan Quinn had to hold him back. I feel like that's the perfect combination. Your rookie franchise quarterback should want to go back out there, but your head coach should also want to make sure he doesn't go back out there. I feel like that's best case scenario for that small situation right there. Also, shouts out to my boy Marshall because he brings up a good point. Jayden Daniels will have his up and downs like most rookies, but man, it's really hard not to get excited about him. Stud. I completely agree there. Completely agree. Also, moving on, just to let you know, the Commanders gave Jayden Daniels and Marcus Mariota a series apiece, each a series, and then right after that, Jeff Driscoll came in with more than 2 minutes left in the first quarter and pretty much went for a really long time. And then Sam Hartman came back in, and while Jeff Driscoll was out there, he looked like quarterback too, I'm not gonna lie. But there's context. Marcus Mariota only had 1 drive, and he didn't get a lot of good blocking during that drive. And same thing with training camp. Jeff Driscoll has looked better than Marcus Mariota from everything I've heard and seen so far in training camp, but there's context to that as well, because Jeff Driscoll's been out there with the second and third stringers, basically, whereas Marcus Mariota's even been going out there against the starters, like against guys like Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, Daron Payne, and Jonathan Allen, those guys, Jeremy Chin, Quan Martin. Like, those are the guys that Marcus Mariota's going against occasionally in practice, quite often in practice. So even though Jeff Driscoll has looked better so far in training camp, and he looked better in that preseason game, there's context to both. Training camp, he's going against a worse defense, going against the further down depth chart guys. And then in the preseason, he had more time to kind of warm up, whereas Marcus Mariota had that one drive. He didn't necessarily look good in it, but it just, it wasn't much he could do with just in one drive. He couldn't even get comfortable and get heated up. But speaking of Jeff Driscoll and how he came in towards the end of the first quarter, stayed in for a while. At a certain point, Sam Hartman came in the game, and he was in there for a long time, and he started off a little ugly. But then he heated up as well and showed off his legs. And I mean, every quarterback on this team is mobile, at least somewhat. I saw Jeff Driscoll take off. I saw Sam Hartman take off and get some first downs with their legs. I'm liking what I'm seeing, escaping pressure, all of that. But the question was, did he get hurt? Because Jeff Driscoll came back into the game in the late fourth, and that's weird because it's kind of like once a quarterback steps off the field, they're typically not going to come back in. Jayden Daniels first drive, Marcus Mariota second, then it was supposed to be Jeff Driscoll going all the way to the point that Sam Hartman came in, and then Sam Hartman was supposed to finish the game. Well, apparently, I don't know if we ever got an injury update on it, but Sam Fortier said that he saw Sam Hartman with an ice bag wrapped around his right shoulder in the tunnel under the stadium. So we'll see how that goes there. I'm gonna try to keep y'all updated with that injury report as soon as Dan Quinn addresses it. Now moving on to the running back position. Rotation wise, and this may just be a preseason experiment type of thing, but Cliff let Brian Robinson get most of the touch, especially most of the carries. But Austin Eckler was out there for to be a target for Jayden Daniels as a running back in the passing game, and he was out there in the red zone to look pretty quick. He definitely looked like he found the fountain of youth. But if I had to say, one of these running backs between the two had the slight edge as looking like as the number one guy. Technically, there is no number one guy, but if I'm splitting hairs, it looked like Brian Robinson is going to be the guy that, when in doubt, ends up getting the most carries. Also, Michael Wiley, when he was out there, he looked like a starter amongst backups, man. Now, granted, again, context, he was out there with backups, but when you're out there with backups, your main job is to look like a guy that doesn't belong. You're supposed to stand out. You're supposed to shine. You're supposed to be bright out there, and he sure was, man. He looked really good against those backups. I mean, it's definitely an argument to be made that he should be higher on the depth chart. Now, making a 53-man roster, that's another thing. There's an argument there too, that he made a case, but at the very least, he should definitely be higher on the depth chart than he probably is right now, because he looks really good out there, man. I'm not gonna lie. That's what Michael Wiley did his thing. Chris Rodriguez had a couple of nice runs. Austin Jones looked pretty decent as well. I saw Jeremy McNichols at a certain point, I believe, out there with Marcus Mariota looked pretty decent, but Michael Wiley stood out the most. Now, granted, he probably played the most as well, but he looks really good out there, man. And shouts out to Ryan Fowler for bringing this up. He said Commanders running back Michael Wiley and safety Tyler Owens took advantage of every rep against New York this afternoon. Wiley was a fantastic running back in pass protection, and it's an easy way to bump up the depth chart because of that. And I didn't even notice the pass protection wise, so I'm gonna take Ryan Fowler's word for it. And if Michael Wiley was making all of those plays in the run game and catching passes underneath and getting first downs, got a nice touchdown that was set up by Braden Daniels. We'll talk about him in the offensive line part of it, because I was pleasantly surprised by him at right tackle today. But Michael Wiley, on top of all of the highlights he made, the noticeable plays that made him shine, he was also good in pass protection. That sounds like a guy that's destined to make this 53-man roster one way or another, but we'll see. And then Ryan Fowler also finished it up with intriguing young players that showcased well in the pre-draft process as well. So these are guys that are coming in between Michael Wiley and Tyler Owens, my boy that I've been rooting for, that I've been telling you all about since March before we even signed him as an undrafted free agent. I included him in like 2 or 3 of my mock drafts. I'm very excited to be hearing good things about him. We'll definitely talk about him when we get to the safety part of this video. And then wide receiver wise, and now moving on to wide receivers, man. Olamide Zaccheaus, hey man, he looked good out there. Amongst the backups, he looked like a starter, and out there with the starters, it looked like he kind of belonged. I'm not gonna lie. He had that 24-yard reception. Sadly, offset and penalties wiped that away, but that was not his fault at all. He made a great play there. He looks really good, first of all, as a receiver, but also as a returner, man. I mean, he may make this team as the returner. He looked like the starting punt returner out there, and then he's also looking like at least one of the top 6 receivers. The veteran wide receiver, my fault, Olamide. I gotta work on that. I'm trying my best. It's not Olamide, it's Olamide Zaccheaus. Rico, Olamide Zaccheaus. I apologize, Mrs. Zaccheaus. I'm working on it, man. But either way, this looks like a guy that's destined to make this 53-man roster, because he can contribute as both a returner and a wide receiver. And if he's able to do both, then that sounds like other guys like Casimir Allen and Jamison Crowder need to watch their backs. Then Luke McCaffrey, I didn't see him out there until he was out there with the 3rd and 4th stringers. But once he got out there with Sam Hartman, he really stood out. That's another guy that you're supposed to stand out amongst the backups, and he did that. He looked fast. He looked faster and quicker than all of those guys. He didn't necessarily look 6'2" out there to me, but he looked really quick and fast. He looks like a guy that, granted, he's pretty far down the depth chart, but he's not at risk of not making this team right now. The 3rd round pick, we're going to see some of him. Him and JAYDEN Daniels are going to work on that chemistry, gain that chemistry, and he's going to ball out eventually. But you may want to stock down him for a second as far as like his immediate impact. He may not be out there a lot to start the season, but I really have a good feeling that he's going to work his way up the depth chart, because he has a lot of talent that's just waiting to be unleashed. Then at a certain point in the game, I'm like, where's my boy Bryson Tremaine? I mean, he even got a couple of starting snaps in that joint practice against the Jets, but for some reason, he didn't come into the game until Sam Hartman was out there, I believe, but he made plays, man. He did a great job of using his catch radius to catch a really high ball that was overthrown by Sam Hartman, but 6'5", our only receiver, 6'4" at least. He's the tallest receiver on this team by at least minimum 2 inches. Luke McCaffrey's 2nd in height, and so he really showed off that height. Again, he balled out against the Jets in the joint practice. He had 2 big plays down the field, did something similar in the preseason game, so we saw a flash of that. Now, he did have a drop from a really accurate ball from Sam Hartman on 3rd and short. Even if he would have caught it, it wouldn't have been a first down, but you still got to catch anything that goes through your hands. Tough catch, but still got to catch that, man. But hey, man, I like what I saw from Bryce Tremaine. I wish that he would have been out there sooner, especially like out there with Jeff Driscoll when he was out there balling. Would have liked for him to make a few more highlights, but Bryson Tremaine may be a guy that makes this team as well. We'll definitely keep track of that, because he's also a good special teamer. He's not a returner, but special teams coverage and things like that, you know, he's involved, kickoff stuff like that. And even though I know he's not making the team, my Georgia dog, Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint, I believe he had a catch at a certain point. Rooting for him to make the team. Not very confident in it, Yeah, at all. Actually, I would bet money that he doesn't make the team, but I'm just happy that he went out there and made a catch. And of course, we got to talk about De'Ami Brown. That big time catch down the field from JAYDEN Daniels. He's already trying to utilize De'Ami Brown's deep ball ability. Now, that's a thing, though. De'Ami Brown's not the fastest guy in the world. He runs in the 4.4s. So he's known for his deep threat ability, but to the same point that I've brought up a few times last year, I like De'Ami Brown, but when we talk about him being a burner down the field, it's not like he's a guy that gets a lot of separation. Thank goodness JAYDEN Daniels is the type of quarterback where he doesn't need to, so this could be the type of quarterback that actually allows De'Ami Brown to be great, because he's known as a deep threat, but he's not a burner that's going to leave guys in the dust. They're going to be right there on his hips. You just got to hope that he doesn't have safety help over the top, and he can make plays down the field. He made the catch and everything, so I'm really excited about De'Ami Brown, and that's really about it out of the receiver room that I really noticed. We'll see what happens there. Now, moving on to the tight ends. Again, Zach Ertz with him being hurt, or I mean, not hurt. They just wanted the rest to start. It's my fault. Do not erase that. Zach Ertz was not hurt. I just believe he didn't play just because he was a veteran, just like Bobby Wagner didn't play. There was just certain guys, especially of a certain age, like Frankie Louvu, those starters played. The younger guys, kind of relatively young, especially some of the rookies, if they were healthy to go. But some even healthy guys, like the veteran of the veterans, like Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz, they did not allow them to go out there, and I agree with the decision. I'm not gonna lie. So Ben Sinnott was out there as much as possible, and man, that first catch he had, where he like caught the ball and then had all kinds of yak yardage to end up resulting in a 44-yard gain. I mean, he was literally carrying people with him. They could not tackle him, and he looked literally like Chris Cooley, but more athletic. I think people forget how athletic and how well he tested at the combine, man. And he's a yak god. I told y'all about this from watching this tape. You can go back and look at my breakdown on Ben Sinnott after we took him in late April. You can go look at that over 30-minute breakdown I did of him. I told you that this is a guy that gets a lot of yards after the catch, not by his speed or agility, but by the fact that people just simply can't tackle this guy. And man, he looked great out there. Even when he came out later with Sam Hartman, he got even more yards after catch with a catch that he had. Every catch that he had ended up resulting in a first down. This is a very efficient guy. I'm really excited because he's also a really physical blocker. That's the great thing about Ben Sinnott. On top of the versatility to where he can play fullback, inline tight end, big slot, big out wide sometimes even in college, he presents the ceiling of a Zach Ertz in the passing game, and also the ceiling as a blocker of John Bates. So this guy is going to be scary against other teams, man. And shouts out to Grant Paulson because he brings up a great point. He said Ben Sinnott looks very comfortable today. Sure, he's playing against backups, but he looks better than them and flashing like a strobe light. I love what I'm saying for the 53rd overall pick. So to go back to my point, even if you are out there with backups, if you look like a god amongst men, if you look like a starter amongst backups, you're doing your job. That's what you're supposed to do. Ben Sinnott definitely did that. And then George Kittle even tweeted about the 44-yard catch that he had, the first catch that he had that was like big time play, one of the best plays the whole game. Chris Cooley tweeted it and said that he looks like a George Kittle, and it's scary. I mean, take it from Chris Cooley himself, who played the tight end position at a very high level, to say that Ben Sinnott looks like George Kittle, who Adam Peters compared to George Kittle as well. The same Adam Peters that drafted George Kittle. I don't think anybody else knew George Kittle would be that good, and Adam Peters was the guy that was literally like, we gotta take this guy as soon as possible. They waited until the 5th round to do it. You see what he turned into. So if anybody has an elite eye for tight end talent, it's Adam Peters, and that's the same guy that compared Ben Sinnott to George Kittle. Now you have Chris Cooley backing up the same thing as well. I'm really excited. Now moving on to the offensive line. First of all, before we even move on to the offensive line too, shouts out to Cole Turner. Now, he did look slow out there, but he made a couple of good catches. John Bates is always going to block his tail off. I didn't really necessarily notice Colson Yonkov. I just wanted to tell y'all that before we move on to the offensive line. First of all, starting left tackle Brandon Coleman was out. Like I already told y'all, starting right guard Samuel Cosme was out. And starting right tackle Andrew Wiley was also out. So we only had 2 starters on the offensive line, but they did their thing against that Jets D-line. Now, granted, I do believe that the Jets sat a lot of their starters, so it's not a complete evaluation here. Evaluation definitely still very much incomplete on the offensive line, but at least they did what they needed to do to run the ball well and effectively and keep JAYDEN Daniels clean while he was out there, virtually untouched his whole entire drive out there before he left. So shouts out to that. But basically, with our 3 starting offensive linemen out, the only starters were left guard, Nick Allegretti, and Tyler Biotish at center. I think Trent Scott may have started at left tackle. I think Mason Brooks was your starting right guard, and Chris Paul, who does not play tackle at all. We have so many injuries because Cornelius Lucas again was out due to personal reasons. Even Chris Paul had to play right tackle for us with the starters, the starting right tackle. Just right tackle alone for Chris Paul sounds crazy to me, but the starting right tackle is insane. So that should just give you an idea of what the offensive line not only looked like today, but what they looked like against the Jets in joint practice and why they were getting beat up on so bad. Then Dan Quinn finally gave us a Brandon Coleman update. After practice, he said that he has a shoulder and pec strain, and he said that he's day-to-day / week-to-week, and he anticipates Coleman to make a speedy recovery. I really, really hope so, because it's not just about getting him back healthy. It's about getting him back healthy as soon as possible, because he is a third-round pick rookie. He needs as many snaps as he possibly can to get ready for this NFL season. So the longer he's out, the longer that we're stalling his development, basically. So that sucks. Nick Allegretti, who was one of our very few starters out there, I remember him getting a false start, but outside of that, I believe he had a pretty good game. And then now we got to talk about Braden Daniels, because that Michael Wiley touchdown when it was 10-10, 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and then Michael Wiley just had a chasm. I mean, like, just like the Grand Canyon to walk through. He could just breeze through there. Any of y'all watching this video, we all could have scored that touchdown untouched. That's how wide the gap was, and Braden Daniels deserves a lot of credit for that. He had a really good game today, man. I'm pleasantly surprised. He was one of those guys, I'm not gonna lie, I gave up on. Y'all know me. I'm a big ceiling guy. I'm a big high potential guy. If you're raw, but as long as you have some elite traits, we can work with that. I'm willing to be patient. My whole logic is, you pay the coaches millions of dollars. What's the point of giving coaches a bunch of good players that are already good? Whereas, I mean, what are you paying millions of dollars for if they can't develop guys and find diamonds in the rough and bring out get greatness out of them? But even then, even with that train of thought, I was still already like, man, I don't know. Braden Daniels may be a lost cause. Now, granted, he was out there with the backups, but he looked really good. Another guy that looked like a starter amongst backups, a god amongst men. Mark Tyler even said, I can't wait to go back and rewatch this game tomorrow morning. I'm really impressed with the athleticism, hand placement, and overall effort of Braden Daniels at right tackle. I've seen him drop the hips and anchor a few times, and it looked textbook. So Braden Daniels may have actually just gotten better. Maybe he just got better. Who knows? I don't remember seeing Ricky Strongberg out there. I was discouraged by the fact that Michael Dieter, who I felt like was a really good backup interior offensive lineman, and I honestly think he could start for some teams. He got beat really bad on one play. I don't remember the exact situation, but it didn't look good. Trent Scott and those guys that had to start in place of our real starting offensive line, I don't remember them being really bad, but again, the context is that I don't think the Jets had their starting D-line out there, so we still don't exactly know. Now moving on to the defensive side of the ball, and before we even get to that, just overall, I thought this was a great point. This is something I noticed while watching on the live stream, and I completely agree because Zach Selby, I felt like worded it really well, so that's why I wanted to read his wording of it. He said, biggest takeaway from the defense so far, the starters are fast, physical, and energetic. The depth players, on the other hand, still have some work cut out for them. 3 big plays on that drive put the Jets in scoring position. One was on 3rd and 11. So the backup still a long way to go, but the starters are ready to go. And my main thing that I want to bring up is that you can tell those guys are ready to hit somebody other than their own teammates, who they have to play fairly reserved against, because you don't want to hurt your own offensive players. That makes your team worse. So they're not even able to unleash until this Jets preseason game, basically. And I know that they were excited. You could tell they were flying around. Frankie Louisville and Mike Sanford still were everywhere. You could just tell that they were like, yes, I finally get to be 100% me without having to worry about the health of the guy that I'm going against. And it definitely boded very well for the defense. Made me happy to see. Now, defensive line wise, Benning Patoa even had a sack on Tyrod Taylor on 3rd down. I like some of the flashes I saw from him, but also Jamin Davis showed me a little something, man. He had 2 back-to-back plays versus the run where he set the edge, looked really strong, which is, if anything, I thought maybe he could find a way to make this 53-man roster as a pass rusher, a guy that, with his elite athleticism, he can get around a tackle and get to the quarterback, but he showed strength. He showed an anchor to set the edge and not let people push him around, and made 2 straight run stops. That was big time. He really flashed. Consecutive back-to-back plays on the edge is very noticeable, but at the same time, I don't know what happened, but in the last 2 minutes of the game, Jamin Davis went back out there, and that's very concerning. He looked really good out there early on with the starters or the second strings, whatever. He was out there in the first quarter, though, made some really impressive plays. But the fact that he went back out there really late into the fourth quarter, it's kind of like, is he fighting for a roster spot? I don't know. Chris Russell brings up a good point. Obviously not a great sign for the former first-round pick to be out there, who was very much on the bubble before camp. I didn't like the fact that I saw him at the end. Like, what does that mean? What are you trying to say? Is he a fourth stringer? He looked good out there with the second stringer, so I don't know what happened. Really don't know what happened there. And so I'm definitely worried there. We'll see, though. And then KJ Henry had a good play where he stayed patient and disciplined to blow up a third down, which forced him to punt at one point in time. And then Javonte Jean-Baptiste flashed today. He had a really good tackle for loss, and that's the 7th rounder that Adam Peters and company have drafted this rookie season. I feel like he's the guy that probably gets talked the least and overlooked by this rookie class because he was the final pick of the draft, so I'm not surprised. But I feel like we focus on a lot of undrafted free agents even more than we focus on Jean-Baptiste, and I like the fact that he's flashing. I've even heard a lot of reporters that have gone to Commanders training camp practices that have said, including like Linnell Willingham, he said that Javonte Jean-Baptiste's long arm length and how long he is has really stood out in practice, and there's probably a reason that they had him second in the depth chart at edge. Like right behind Dorrance Armstrong and Cleveland Farrell, you have Javonte Jean-Baptiste, and he showed you why today. So I'm really excited about his potential there. Now moving on to linebacker, Anthony Pittman flashed at linebacker with the backups at times, man. And it was starting to be like, yo, this Pittman guy standing out. I thought we brought him here from the Lions because he was their best special teams player. So I thought we were bringing him here to do just that. Just literally that. Be an elite special teamer. Because he was basically like the Lions version of Jeremy Reeves last year. He's that good on special teams. But he even looked pretty good out there with the backups as a linebacker. So we probably have some better depth now than we ever had in a while. Also, I thought this was hilarious, but while we were watching the stream together live, the chat started to say that we need to retire the number 51 and also said that the number was cursed because, man, 51 looked terrible out there. I swear it was the ghost of David Mayo that is haunting that number, man. And just to let you know, if you're wondering, if you were also somebody that was watching the game like, yo, this number 51 guy looks slow, he does not look good out there, that is undrafted free agent Bo Bauer. And I think he's the weird one where he kind of technically came out of college like a year or two ago, but he never got picked up. So he's like an undrafted free agent technically of 2024 because I believe we're the first ones to sign him, but he's kind of just been lingering out there, something like that. Either way, he's an undrafted free agent. He went undrafted and we're trying to give him a shot, but he looked pretty bad this preseason game, man. I mean, we were already laughing about the number 51 curse in the chat at one point in time, and then after that he got outran on a 3rd and 7 by that Martinez backup quarterback on the Jets. And I mean, he was looking bad out there. I'm convinced at this point it may not even be Bo Bauer. It may just be the number 51, man. Maybe number 51 comes with an extra 51 pounds of weight stitched into the jersey somewhere, which causes people to run slower. Or maybe they just give number 51 to the slowest linebacker on the team on purpose. Like, hey, we see that you're slow. You're the slowest linebacker. Take this number 51 so we know off rip, just based off of the number, who's the slowest linebacker on the team. I'm convinced that it's got to be one or the other, man. There's no way that it just so happens that number 51s on this team were just extremely slow at the linebacker position. Also, I never really noticed Jordan McGee. I was wondering where he was today. I was really looking forward to seeing him make a play. Somebody said in the chat that they pointed out the fact that he made a tackle, but I don't remember that, so I just can't personally speak on it. I'm not just going to sit here and lie and make stuff up. If I didn't see it, I'm not going to say it. Also, speaking of linebacker, Frankie Louvu was everywhere, man. I liked what I saw from him, man. I liked it. We saw some flashes. There was a play on 3rd down where he and Mike Sanders still were like, I mean, they did a great job on 3rd and long to force them to kick the ball. They both rallied to the same ball carrier, and it looked crazy. It just absolutely looked insane. I loved that play. And of the 3 passing snaps that Frankie Louvu was on the field, he rushed the quarterback on all of them. So this is a guy that may be decent in coverage, but you want him going after the quarterback as much as possible. But he's also a really good run stopper as an inside linebacker. So those are the 2 things you're probably going to see him do the most. Now moving on to cornerback, speaking of Mikey Sanders still, when are we going to get him a new number, dog? Why is he sharing number 2 with De'Ami Brown still, man? Matter of fact, take that number 0 for Marcus Mariota, like I said, the day we drafted him. Take that number 0 off for Marcus Mariota. That number belongs to a guy that's going to be out there making plays for you. Ultimately, the goal is that Marcus Mariota never touches the field for us in a non-preseason game. So there's no reason he should have a number as 5 as 0, man. Somebody else deserves that number. I think it would be perfect for Mike Sainristil. Literally perfect, man. Give it to him. And then also Emmanuel Forbes, man, of course, he didn't look too great in coverage today. It was kind of an up and down day, just like the Jets joint practice. Everybody focused on all of the bad that he did, but he had an interception and actually locked up Garrett Wilson on like 2 or 3 snaps. Like, he won some snaps. Now, granted, overall, Garrett Wilson won the day for sure. No argument against that. But, I mean, people are just acting like he only lost against the Jets, and I feel like something similar happened today. Now, granted, he doesn't look ready to necessarily start yet, or at the very least, he's not your cornerback 1 that covers the best receiver on another team. He's not living up to the first round potential, but I also feel like we need to be somewhere in the middle where he's not as bad as people say. He's not as good as we hoped, but he's not as terrible as people act like sometimes. But he did give up that touchdown that wasn't good. But now it makes me think, is Michael Davis your starting cornerback opposite of Benjamin St-Juste? Not even necessarily because of what he did, but what Forbes didn't do so far in the joint practice in the preseason game against the Jets. Did Michael Davis just move up the depth chart just simply because Emmanuel Forbes doesn't look like he's cut out to do it? We'll see. Also, Noah Igbinoghene apparently ended up having to head to the locker room early. He was high-fiving everybody leaving out, so hopefully it's not bad. We'll see. That's a random injury. And then James Pierre probably had the worst performance of any DB, man. He allowed 2 big passes, man, and even on a punt return, he couldn't find anybody to block. Shouts out to Serge the Shooter for pointing that out. That's the guy that's probably going to get, like, he's on the chopping block the soonest, man, at DB especially. Then safety-wise, Tyler Owens, man, I've been telling y'all since March, since I was mock drafting him to us all the way back then, before we even got him as an undrafted free agent, before the draft even happened. I told y'all, man, and he stood out on special teams today, man. And with the training camp he's been having, I mean, one of my favorite prospects on the team, and Tyler Owens, may actually make the team, man. I had Armani Rogers on offense. I have Tyler Owens on defense as my freak athletes that I'm very excited about. And to my knowledge, on top of the preseason game showing that he just had just now, I believe he's the only player on our team right now with multiple interceptions in training camp so far. At least based on the information that I have from media members that have been going to all of the practices, he's the only one that I can confirm has at least 2 interceptions right now. And then on top of that, let's talk about the ceiling, man. And I've read this to people over and over again during the live stream, but people somehow do not notice, forget, whatever it is, that this guy is an absolute alien, arguably one of the freakiest athletes in the NFL, easily one of the freakiest athletes, if not the freakiest athlete we have on our entire team. This guy is 6'2", 220 pounds, 96th percentile in wingspan with 79 and 6/8 inch arms. He had a 41-inch vertical, which is absolutely insane. And then he had the longest broad jump of all defensive backs at the combine with a 146. Almost set a record, and he was projected to run a 4.3 flat 40 time. He himself predicted that he would run somewhere in the 4.2s at 6'2", 220 pounds, but he got hurt at the combine, so he was never able to get like an official 40 time. But man, 6'2", 220 pounds, the most explosive defensive back out of this entire draft that came out of the combine, that participated in the combine, and again, 6'2", 220 pounds, running a 4.3 no matter what is ridiculous. In the school of Dan Quinn, that likes the big safeties like the Cam Chancellors and the J-Ron Curses, Tyler Owens is the most naturally talented and most athletic out of all of them. Just like God-given ability-wise, the ultimate goal is for him to eventually turn into like a faster Cam Chancellor. But if, and that's a big if, he ever were to get to that point, and that's a really huge if, I want to emphasize that, I don't expect it to happen anytime soon. So I'm just telling you why he should make the team, but I also want to explain to you why when we get on Sundays and you're like, yo, where's that freak athlete you were talking about? That's why. He's still very raw, even though he leads I think our whole entire team in interceptions so far in training camp, at least that I know of, but there's still some rawness there to where you don't necessarily trust him as a safety just yet. But as an elite special teamer, the evidence is there. You saw him blow up that play on that punt return. But man, if he were ever to reach Cam Chancellor level, like a faster version of Cam Chancellor, I would bet money it wouldn't happen this year. As much of a Tyler Owens fan as I am, he's still too raw. You got to be patient. I hope this franchise shows patience and take their time with him and just let him develop as slowly as he needs to. And then Percy Butler, saw a lot of people making fun of him for getting ran over, but at the very least, the tackles were being made. Like, he wasn't just completely whiffing on tackles, missing, or getting ran over, truck stick, and then the guy keeps running. At least the guy was falling. And the Jets had a big running back there. That Braden kid was big. And so, Hey man, I ain't mad at Percy Butler. I feel like he was getting a little bit too much hate in the chat and what I was seeing on Twitter. At least the tackles were made. I mean, ideally you want it to be a textbook tackle to where the running back falls backwards or at least sideways. But hey, the tackles were made. A lot of guys get ran over and the running back keeps going. Percy Butler did not allow that to happen both times he got ran over. Then special teams wise, Olamide Zaccheaus, man, he looked pretty good in those punt returns, and he got the nod as the starting punt returner out there with the starters and things like that. He had a 19-yard punt return, and people are saying that is longer than any punt return that Dax Milne never had here in 3 years. Is that true? My boy Ken Johannesson said that. I never actually found the stat myself to dig that up, but is that really true? That 19-yard punt return, but my fault. Now Olamide Zaccheaus. That 19-yard punt was longer than any punt Dax Milne ever had in the 3 years he was here. If that is true, that is absolutely insane, man. But this guy looks like he's really trying to make the roster like we already talked about earlier as a punt returner and a receiver, man. Now moving on to the kicker situation, it's terrible. It's Mayday. The Washington kicker, I'm assuming right now, that's going to be kicking for us in the regular season is not on this roster yet, man. You have Riley Patterson from 39, doinked it on the left goalpost, and like I said during the live stream, I mean, you can't be sorry and have bad luck, because that's one of those things where you hit the goalpost. You couldn't do that on purpose if you wanted to. So it's just like you can't be sorry and have bad luck to the point that you do something that you couldn't even do if you really tried to do, and that's hit the goalpost directly. So you're cooked. You look worse than Ramiz Ahmed, and that's saying a lot, because you got to remember that Ramiz Ahmed was Chris Blewett's backup in the XFL. The very Chris Blewett that literally blew it when he was here. That Ramiz Ahmed was his backup at the XFL level, but then he made his 40-yarder. But from what I saw in practice, I didn't like what I saw at all, and I was hoping that the guy that we would bring in addition to Ramiz Ahmed, will at least give him a run for his money and compete. But for the fact that Ramiz Ahmed looks significantly better than Riley Patterson, that's not good at all. Neither of these kickers are good. Ultimately, we're hoping and waiting that another team releases their kicker, because a lot of teams have 2 kickers right now. Some teams, I think even like 2 or 3 of them, have 3 kickers. So we're just waiting and hoping that when those guys get released, we're able to scoop up the best one, because eventually everybody's going to get down to 1 kicker. You don't want to use up a 53-man roster spot on an additional kicker. You should never have to do that. So once teams start releasing their kickers, hopefully we can get the best of the bunch, because I'm pretty sure anybody that we can get our hands on is better than what we have right now. And then Tressway, man, you could argue, did he make the play of the day, man? That open field tackle was huge, because that may have been a punt return for a touchdown if he didn't do that. Now, the first thing I thought about was, man, what's going on with the special teams coverage? We brought over Larry Izzo, who's an elite special teams coach. We didn't look good right there, so something's wrong. We got to fix it. That's something we definitely need to focus on as we continue through the off season before we get to the regular season, things like that. But man, that was a great tackle. Now, I was looking at him crazy like, man, don't hurt yourself over a preseason tackle. Just let him get that punt return for a touchdown. It is okay. It is preseason. But still, that was a very impressive tackle, and I love the fact that even more, his teammates swarmed him after he made that tackle. They were so hyped, as if he made like the game-winning, game-saving tackle in the Super Bowl. I loved it. And that's just something Tressway has done. That's not his first time doing that. I love some Tressway. The team loves him as well. Just continuing to show why he's the MVP of the team until he gets dethroned by somebody like Jayden Daniels. Now, let's talk about some other people's overall reviews for the game, just to kind of give you their thoughts and why I agree with them. Grant Paulson said, quote, notable defenders on the field for the Commanders in the final minutes of Game 1. Jamin Davis, Fadarian Mathis, KJ Henry, John Ridgeway, and Dominique Hampton. Remember, Jamin Davis and Fadarian Mathis were drafted in the top 2 rounds by Ron Rivera in different years. Both are now clearly fighting for roster spots, and that's not good. Which is crazy, because Fadarian Mathis actually made a play sometime earlier in the game before he got subbed back in at the end. Same thing with Jamin Davis. So I was surprised to see them out there. It's not a good look to be out there with the 4th stringers and things like that, but I thought he looked pretty good, man. I'm not gonna lie. And then shouts out to Linnell Willingham. He said, this defense looks like a group that had been waiting to really knock someone's block off. Like I mentioned earlier, I completely agree. Impressive both start for both units. I've been telling you all about Diami is real. Side note, can Driscoll push for QB2? I'm not gonna lie, he looked like QB2 out there today, but maybe it's not enough for him to dethrone him. Maybe we got to see those guys go out there and play longer. And then Mason Kinahan said stock up, stock down after today's game. Stock ups, Jayden Daniels, Ben Sinnott, KJ Henry, Mike Sandersdale, and Tyler Owens, but stocks down, Marcus Mariota, Emmanuel Forbes, and Riley Patterson, the kicker. He said the overall effort was noticeably different than the end of last year, and I will take it. And then lastly, before we get up out of here, PFT commenter, because he is a big Commanders fan, and of course he's probably joking, but he tweeted a really long tweet, and buckle up. He said, he's so good, as in Jayden Daniels. We're so back. Party's over. Hope the rest of the league got their laughs in when our stadium fell apart and when it leaked S-word onto fans, or when we made an invisible statue to our best player of the last 30 years, or when we effed up Kirk's negotiation, or when we effed up Kirk's negotiation the second time, or when Trent Williams demanded a trade because we misdiagnosed his cancer, or when we effed up Kirk's negotiation a third time, or when our field ruined our best chance at a quarterback ever, or when we changed our name twice, or when we paid Ryan Fitzpatrick and he played for a quarter, or when we paid Albert Ainsworth $100 million, or when we hired a guy out of the bingo hall to call plays, or when he just kept going. He just kept going, all of the bad stuff that's happened lately, basically, and he just basically cut it off like that as a joke, like, you know, we've been through a lot, basically, but it seems like it may finally be over. I love that tweet. I even retweeted it myself, man. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please get in the comment section. Let me know if you feel about everything discussed in this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release an informative and opinionated video just like this one, man. I really appreciate y'all for pulling up to the live stream, leaving likes. Shouts out to all of y'all that donated, especially, man. Y'all are the real MVPs of today, man. Shouts out to the Commanders. They look better than I expected in a lot of areas. We still have some concerns. We're not a perfect team. We're not a Super Bowl contender yet, but we looked better in certain areas than I expected, so I'm very happy. Again, be on the lookout tomorrow for potentially me doing like a stock up, stock down on the overall thing. Who are the most notable players that look good? Who are the most notable players that look bad? So stay tuned for all of that. Of course, let me know in the comment section how you feel about everything discussed in the video. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my points. Make sure you do not leave this video without leaving a like. I'm gonna try my best to read and reply to as many comments as possible. I really appreciate y'all. Stay tuned. I will be live streaming the next preseason game as well. Y'all know I'm coming with at least one video every day, so stay tuned. If you haven't looked out for my video within 24 hours, go look, because there's always gonna be something new there. Really appreciate y'all. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I'm out.